So welcome to TAP training. We're going to go through a lot today. So once again, we have until about, I think I said 3 or 3:30 today. So we're going to try and get as much as we can in. Please throw in the chat if you need me to slow down so I can slow down for you guys. And I'm still admitting people as they come in. So today we're going to discuss the multiple pathways to New York State aid. There are 3 pathways to receive New York State financial aid. We'll discuss them. We have another training that is called the alternate pathways training that's on Monday. That will go into the other 2 pathways, but we're going to focus on the FAFSA-TAP pathway today. Then we're going to review the TAP application in its entirety. When I do that, I usually go through and hit the places where students are having the most issues or where students may miss information or not understand information so you can best guide them in that process. And then something I added this year was top errors and how to resolve them. So there are a lot of errors that we're seeing pretty consistently across the board that we want to kind of hit up front now. There's also a resource that I'll show you later on that we've created to help students that are having some of those issues repair them and correct them on their own. So they don't have to worry about having a call center appointment with that. All right. So let's get into it. The 26-27 TAP is not open yet. It opens October 1st. So unlike the FAFSA, which is in open beta right now, the TAP still is going to open October 1st. That gives students plenty of time to get their FAFSA in before completing the TAP application. So I mentioned there's 3 pathways, as well as pathways to New York State aid. If you've been around for a while, you may be familiar with the DREAM Act. The DREAM Act's been around for a while. We've been doing training on the DREAM Act. If you're new to financial aid, the DREAM Act is a tool that helps students that may not meet the citizenship requirements for FAFSA still apply to state aid. Something that is newer this year is the alternate eligibility pathway that was developed and released in, I want to say April or May. I want to say May of this year. This is a new pathway for students that may have privacy concerns to still apply for state aid, even though they may not be applying for federal aid. Now, these are students that are eligible for federal aid, but may not want to apply. And then there's the FAFSA-TAP pathway, which is what we'll talk about today. So just a brief overview of the other 2 programs. The first one is the DREAM Act. Once again, it's a pathway for applicants who are not legal residents of New York, whether they're not whether they have other citizenship statuses or whether their parents do not no longer live in New York. There are some requirements to that program, like educational requirements of being a New York State high school graduate after attending for 2 or more years or hold a New York State GED. If they meet those requirements, they'll be eligible for the DREAM Act. And there's an application that goes with that that's open year round. The DREAM Act is not a financial aid application. Now, there is an application called Dream Act USA that is a different company, a different organization that does a financial aid scholarship. But the DREAM Act for New York State is just an eligibility pathway that lets you walk through the door and apply for TAP. The other pathway that is new that you may not be more familiar with is the alternate eligibility pathway. This is a pathway for students who are U.S. citizens or eligible non-citizens, but their parent or spouse may not be a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen. So for privacy concerns, those students may not want to apply for FAFSA. This gives them the ability to still apply for New York State aid without filling out the FAFSA. They'll have to fill out their own eligibility application through our DREAM Act portal, and then they'll be able to apply for TAP and other scholarships and grants that we have. But once again, this is an eligibility application, not a financial aid application. So we have a whole training on this. We talk about how students can register for these programs and then how they can fill out the TAP application. That's going to be on Monday, the 29th. So feel free to look for that training and to register for that if you have students that are part of that population. Now, the one that we're going to talk about the most today or dive into is the FAFSA-TAP pathway. Now, this is for students who can fill out the FAFSA because they meet the citizenship requirements, and then they file the FAFSA first, and then they're able to go to the TAP application. Now, a question that I might receive is this API link. If you've been in financial aid a while, you remember that at one point in time, students will be able to fill out the FAFSA and then click a link that will send them to our TAP application and bring in some information. That is still not functioning at the time. So when the FAFSA Application Act went through, that was changed, wasn't done. This year, the same is true. So there will be a link saying, hey, apply for state aid. Click this link. That will send them to our website, but it will not import data from the FAFSA this year. Okay, they are working on it for 27, 28, but for 26, 27, as of right now, it is not available. If a student needs a contributor to contribute to their form, they may not see that application link because it needs to be submitted for that link to populate. So if you have a student that's doing it first, they may not see that state aid link unless the contributor started the form first. Okay. So either way, they get into, or if one of those three doorways, I call them, they get into the TAP application. So we're gonna go through the TAP application and how they started and how to get through it. If there's a student in here, feel free to be in here and listen up, but please be aware that I do not have access to your account, so I will not be able to answer those specific questions on accounts and change accounts for you. So the student starts the application on our website or from the link, right? So they go to our website, they go to our homepage, hit tuition assistance program, and then they can hit apply for TAP down here. When they hit that, if they don't have a HESCPin account, they'll have to create one. I'm gonna go through that briefly, just hitting some high points real quick on the HESCPin account. Some big things that we see is one, they forget to hit that first time user click here button. I actually am running some training for our call center staff, and they run through a TAP application, and you'll be surprised how many of them, like, they just start put username and PIN numbers in, and they don't hit that first time users click here. Happens to the best of us, right? The next thing is accepting terms and conditions. So have to accept terms and conditions, much like anything else that they apply for or they enter in information for. But then they'll also have to enter their identity information. Now, this is something that I've seen a lot of students mess up on, right? They've entered, like we talked about in our last course, they've entered the wrong social security number, they've entered the wrong date of birth. This is really important. Students need to enter the correct information for one to connect to the FAFSA, and so there's no processing delays later on. So please make sure that students are entering the most accurate information that they have. All right. Next is their name and mailing address, right, whether they can receive mail. They'll continue to verify their account. Now, students have three options to verify their account. The first one is a New York State issued ID. If they have an ID, they can enter the information here. Now, there are some students that don't have that. I know for me, I was, I'm a city kid, so I took the bus everywhere. I didn't have a license until I was like 22 years old. So I did not have this when I was doing my FAFSA or my TAP application. Then next, if students don't have that, they can hit skip, and they'll be asked to verify through their high school. So they can set their high school from a drop-down menu and then enter their high school ID number. Now, for some high schools, they don't give out those ID numbers, or they may not know that. If that's the case, they can select skip, and then through the FAFSA, we'll be able to verify their identity once we get that ISER data. Now, there's a question in the Q&A panel that I'll throw out there because it kind of goes with this. If the TAP link isn't available at the FAFSA, students should wait three or so days to fill out the TAP application. Now, they can fill it out right away, right? So they will be able to fill it out right away, but it may take 3 or 4 days for that FAFSA to go through, and then for the TAP to connect to that FAFSA to then come into our system, right? So just make sure that the FAFSA has to go through a certain amount of processing to get residency information and college information before we actually get that ISER, and then we can connect the TAP application to that ISER. Okay, so Diana, I hope that answers your question. They can go through it, but it might take a little bit to actually connect and then get into our system. All right. So as we continue here, they have to create a user ID, which is pretty simple. They'll have 3 chances to create a user ID. And if not, they can't create one of 3 chances, then our system will create one for them, which sometimes is easier than trying to make one up on your own. And the same thing goes for the PIN number, right? So we don't use a password. We have a 4-digit PIN number, and there's rules there, just like the user ID. Can't be successive numbers, can't be a birthday, things like that. But they enter that PIN number in. If they don't do that in 3 chances, then we'll generate one for them, which once again, sometimes I like easier, like give me one and I'll write it down and then I have it instead of trying to create one on my own. The last thing the student has to do is just accept if they want email notifications for security incidents or if they want any other notifications from HESC and subscribe to information and emails. Once that's done, they should get 2 green bars saying, hey, you finished creating your account. We sent you an email. Everything looks good. Come on in and do your application, right? So I'll pause right here for a second. If we get into the application, I'm hoping to answer as many questions you have in the chat. What is the one thing that your students or one issue or error that your students received a lot last year? So if you're FAP or a school counselor and you've been working with students, what is the one issue that you saw the most last year? I'll give you a second or two to throw that in the chat. I want to see if we've seen the same thing. What is an issue that you saw happening a lot last year? Okay. So I got missing parent information, IVP, and then we get a website, income verification. Oh, yes, Kristen, that renewal of scholarship application only was wild last year. I've never seen more of those in my life. And the school code, okay. All right. All right, yep. So great. So we're seeing a lot of the same things, especially when it comes to missing information, right? Or forgetting parent information, things like that. There is that part about the scholarship only application that we also saw last year. We saw a lot of those last year. So I have some corrections for those. And there's also some features that we put in this year that are going to help that for you guys. So thank you for that. That was really good. Okay. Now, when they start an application, they should first select the right year, right? So, Allison, I know there is a function on IVP that will show you a little bit of why they may be missing, right? So I could show you that, or I can give you some more explanation on that later on. Okay. But you put that in. Hey, Allison, do me a favor, put that in the Q&A for me so I don't forget about it. I'd appreciate that. So pick the right academic year. That's first. Pick the right academic year. I do have students that will pick the wrong one because at any point in time there are 2 academic years open. Now, there are these usual forms and a disclaimer that applications must be submitted by June 30th of 2027, right? And I'd say do it earlier. I do have students that try to reach out on the 28th and like, I got to get this done. Yes, you do. And it's been open for 18 months. So please try to get it done earlier rather than later. All right. So we hit proceed there. And then first they'll see their personal information and the date of birth comes in right from their student.gov account. So they should put in their street address or mailing address if necessary. And then there's some really important questions right there. And these are questions that I have often seen students have issues with. So one is, are you honorably discharged as a veteran? If the answer is yes, they should select that. That will allow the student to be independent. All right. Now, the next 2 questions can cause headaches. One is, did you live in New York State for all of the 2025 calendar year? Now, students should select yes to this. Any students that selects no to this is going to get this pop-up saying, based on your answer, you may not be a resident and you're going to be required to fill out a residency questionnaire. So students should be aware that if they didn't live here for all 2025, that they're going to be in residency review. Now, just to give you a quick example, residency review is not just about have you been here for 12 months. Residency review is about, are you making New York State your home? Is this going to be your home state? So students that come here directly to go to college technically are making this their home state, and likely if they're from a different state, they're going to be dependent, and their parents are going to be that state of legal residence. So students should be aware of that before they fill out the TAP application. The other one that I see often is the citizenship one. This usually is verified. The first year was a little tricky because of the coding, but this year and previous years, we've seen better results from that. Usually this isn't due to like a status change that has been reflected in the Social Security Administration, and they just have to send us documentation. These are usually done pretty quickly and pretty easily. Now, the next thing I mentioned, you guys mentioned college codes. So students should be able to find college codes quickly and easily here. The one thing that may impact that is if your school has multiple college codes for different programs. That's one thing that may impact it. But usually, for the most part, they can find it by hitting the search button and then putting in whatever they want, right? So I put in SUNY here, and all the SUNYs popped up. And I chose SUNY College of Tech at Alfred just because I felt like it. And we can hit continue from there. So these are all schools that are eligible for TAP. Students also enter the terms. So students often reach out and say, hey, I selected the wrong terms. Usually schools can also go in and change the terms and add a summer term for students. So you can work with the colleges to do that. And then students are also able to do and update their college code in terms on their HESC account. And I'll show you that where that is a little bit later. So last thing they need is their student college ID to finish the college section. Now, at October 1st, I don't think anybody's gonna have a college ID that is a new student, right? So it's okay if they hit, I do not have a student ID, right, for this college, because they may not know what college they're going to yet. They may change it by then. That's okay. If they do know it, they can enter it. If they don't know it, they can hit, I don't have the college ID. It's really important for students to come back and put that information in. We have had students that say, hey, I'm approved for TAP, but my college never got my record. Why is that? And you probably can't see them because they don't have a student ID. So we can't send the record of them on a roster without that student ID. So next we have student marital status. So the student is married as of, I think that's your December 31st of 2025. They're going to be an independent student, right? If they're married after that, they will not be an independent student. Now, you guys, the independent dependency questions have been a headache, I think, for quite some time. I've seen it, I think this came from the chat as well. I've seen a multitude of students that said, oh, I set the wrong one. I selected the wrong one. I got to go in. Once IVP and once certain things have been processed, students cannot go in by themselves to change independence information. That's simply to stop students from saying, no, I am independent, or like, no, you're not. And they're like, yeah, you are. So this helps them to understand they have to come to us to change dependency status. So they're claiming independence instead of a radio button, it is now a drop down. They have to select yes or no. So students who are claiming financial independence want to be independent that year. Okay. Students who are dependent students should enter no, I'm not claiming financial independence. Another thing we add is, do you have dependent children? Right. So there are some times where a student had dependent children, but due to how they're tax filing, you may not see them. So this is a way for them to indicate to us we have the dependent children, and then they'll have to prove that to us if it's not on the tax return with tax and finance later on. This last question is, are you a foster youth, ward of the court, or orphan after 13? Much like the FAFSA, any student that is in that situation at or after the age of 13 will be considered an independent student, right? So they'll have to send us information like a court order or letters from the group home, things like that, to prove that independent status, but they will be considered independent and will not need to enter any parent information in. If a student selects that as well, they will also receive a PDF that will show them how they can get additional funds from OCFS. OCFS has a Office of Children and Family Services, has an additional bucket of funds for students that are in that situation. Now, if you look up here real quick, you see this please note, and in Ray, so you must select yes or no to continue. This is a new feature that went in towards the end of last year. You guys mentioned that a lot of times what's happening is students are leaving incomplete information, and that is delaying their application. Well, now if the information that should be present but is not present, they're going to receive a notice before they can move on to say, you got to enter this, right? You got to select the answer for this. So this should mitigate some of the students that just forget to put something in, especially when it comes to the marital status of their parents. We've seen that a lot, where that is the question that students neglect to answer or the exclusion reason, and their application is held up. Now they'll have a message saying you can't go further until you hit an answer for those questions. I think that's a huge win for you guys to make sure there's information in the application. Now, next up, we have this independent status questions. So students that are 22 and under are automatically independent unless they have a special condition that we talked about earlier. But students that are over 22 may still be dependent if they answer yes to one of these questions. So I'll explain those questions the best I can. So the first one is pretty self-explanatory. Were you or will you be claimed as a dependent by either of your parents on the 25 or 26 tax return? Notice it says parents here. Now, if the child was adopted before the age of 13, or if the child or the biological or step parents, that's what we're talking about here. Okay. If it's a grandparent, right, then should be saying no here. If it's an auntie, uncle, cousin, brother, or legal guardian, they should be saying no. Students that are in legal guardianship are also independent, so they should be answering no to these questions because it's not their biological or step parent or adoptive parent before the age of 13. The second one is live in an apartment, house, or building owned or leased by their parents for more than 6 weeks. That's something that I'm sure you guys may have some stuff with this. I've seen this a lot where I've had students that are saying, "Well, I live on my own." Well, what do you live with? I live on my own. Well, the address hasn't changed. Well, I live in my mom's garage apartment or the duplex, or my mom rents or my dad rents this Airbnb or apartment for me. He's on the lease. In those situations, the student is still dependent because they're still living in an apartment, house, or building that is owned or leased by their parents, right, for more than 6 weeks. And then the last one is receiving gifts. So if they receive gifts worth more than $750 by their parents, they can select yes to that question. That's something that's up to their discretion. Um, some students, some parents love giving their kids money, right? Some they're just doing it, or they're paying a bill here or there, or they're helping them with gas money or utilities, or buy them extravagant gifts for Christmas. They would have to dictate that there. Now, as I mentioned, the special condition is really important. Okay. If they don't have a special condition and they're under 22, they will be considered a dependent student, right? And there's any a message here that says you have to be have a special condition in order to be dependent. If you don't, this is a new message down here. Fail to report parental information will delay your award. So we'll let the students know early. You have to, whether they have to or don't have to, put in parent information. So if both of the parents are totally permanently disabled or declared incompetent, they should select that. Ward of the court is an option. When we look at public assistance, doesn't include food stamps or unemployment insurance. If they're getting it, it has to be as their own, not as a dependent under somebody else. And then the last one is like the FAFSA question on unusual circumstances, dealing with anytime a student doesn't have the, it's a risk to the student to be at home, due to abuse of maltreatment or neglect, or if the parents have relinquished their responsibility control by abandonment or things like that. They can select yes. And HESC will work with the student to verify those instances and move them in as a independent student. It's very important that they do that because their application will stop right there until they prove financial independence. And if they're unable to, then they'll be pushed as a dependent and they'll have to come back in and add parent information. We use much of the same documentation as schools do, but we do have a training just on special circumstances, FAFSA and special circumstances that we'll do early next month. So if you want more instruction on special circumstances, these independence situations, and what might constitute independence overrides or income overrides on HES's part, please feel free to look at that training or the resources we have there. We have a bunch of resources on all these topics. I actually put these 2 pages that I like to put on the DREAM Act and alternate path that give more information on those things so you're aware of what we have to offer. Put the resources in here. Some extra resources for you guys. So after we've done dependency status, we'll move on to. Before I do that, there's a couple questions here I want to hit on. Did that one? So, Tina Marie, about contacting the HESC to add the parent information. Um, if the application has not gone through IVP yet, income verification process, they will be able to add it. It's not instant, right? So they'll be able to add that information, and then our staff will have to review that information before it actually takes to their account, right? So it could be a couple of days before they'll see changes to their account. If the student has gone through IVP already, which if their parent information isn't on there, they won't have gone through IVP yet. But if they have to correct that information, or if it's incorrect, or if the name is wrong, or the SSN is wrong, they'll have to come to the call center to make that adjustment for them. All right. Paige, the pre-fill yes or no could be dependent on their previous years. All right. They will still need to manually select it, and it should be blank this year. And then a question about loans or gifts. Yeah, that includes anything, right? So bills, utilities, um, gift money, clothes. Um, so it's not just for college, it's anything, right? Um, and it could be a lot, right? I'm 37 years old. I got three kids. My mom, between our birthdays, my kids' birthdays, Christmas, she probably gives us that much, right? That doesn't make me a dependent student. So there is some leeway with that with students, and it's up to their discretion because we can't verify exactly how much gift aid they received. All right. So great questions, y'all. I appreciate it. So parent information. We're gonna go into that. So Byron, that's a great question about IVP and name mismatch. Um, we're going to that a little bit right now. Okay. So when parents marital status, once again, if they're married, remarried, separated, divorced, widowed, or deceased, any one of those marital statuses, we need a date for that status. Right? There needs to be a date. If they're single and never married, that marital status bar will be grayed out. But if it's not, students will not be able to move forward anymore. They get that message saying, "Hey, you got to fill in a date in here," and they'll put the date in. That was something that really hampered students a lot last year because they would say, the parents are separated, divorced," and then not have a date there. So we didn't know whether we needed that second parent or we didn't need that second parent. So just make sure that you're putting that correct date in. And yes, if they live in New York. Another thing to mention is the parent's current marital status. So some students are looking at this question like, my parents, my biological parents are separated and divorced. Okay. But they neglect to say like their current marital status. So they could be, it also includes if their custodial parent is now remarried, then they should be selecting married dash remarried in that current marital status for that date. So this does include step parents in that if that's applicable to students. Right. So some other income adjustments, we do have income adjustments for those parents that are divorced or separated, or if there's a death in the family of a wage earner. Once again, in that special circumstances course, I'll go through all of that to make sure that you know all that information and what documentation specifically should be sent in for each circumstance for income and for dependents. So now we kind of continue on to the tax information. So this is, I think, kind of what you're talking about here, Byron, when it comes to the issue with IVP, right? What's going on, how they know this mismatch. So most students won't know until they contact us, right? So when it comes to IVP, once IVP is run, they really can't change anything in the application anyway. They're going to have to come through us to do that. So when we do that, when we are talking about IVP and getting parent information, we ask about the income tax return status first. Did they file or did they not file? Right? They should select the appropriate status. I filed a New York State tax return or I did not. If they didn't file a tax return, right, a New York State one, they will be asked if they actually filed a federal tax return, right? And then they'll have to self-report that income. Right. If they want to change self-reported income, if they report income and they're like, oh no, I've reported the wrong amount, they're going to have to prove to us that they didn't file a tax return and that the new amount is what is actually accurate. Right. So make sure that parents or students that did not file a tax return enter the unreported income accurately. Because once they enter that in, they won't be able to change that again. Now, the parents that did file, right? Here's your question about the name mismatch. So one thing that we see often with this one. Um, it states to enter file status um, as it enter the information as it appears on the 2024 income tax return. Social security number, tax identification number, last name. A lot of times what's happening is students are putting in a different name or a different SSN or both, right? We've had some students whose parents get citizenship, they change the name and get an SSN social security number, and so everything's different. Right? We have some that might have changed their last name, or they'll do a different name than someone that's on their tax return. They try to simplify it for the application. They have to make sure that they put in exactly how it looks on the 2024 tax return, even if it's different now. Okay. So they won't know that right away. What they might do is look at their tax return and look at their application and say, oh no, it's the wrong thing. Either way, in those instances, IVP has likely already been run. So that means they'll have to come in to our call center or make an appointment with our call center. And then the call center will be able to change that last name for them if this needs to be changed, or change the social security number of the parent and then run through IVP again. All right, so the call center can do that instantly now once the student's on the phone with them. I do recognize that it's not a speedy, right? Right now we're booking out until I think October 22nd. But that is the best way and the only way right now to change that information once it's been processed. The merit date is inaccurate. What is the repercussion? So we did a general figure, right? So Diana, that's a great question about the marital status being inaccurate or the date, right? The date is really important. Some students don't know exactly when their parents got divorced or separated. The answer to that is one of two things. One, ask them, right? Ask them the month and the year, right? That's really important. The repercussion is this: if the separation or divorce happened, or the marital status change happened within the last 2 years, right? So between the tax filing status and now, then we may need that second parent's signature to look at the tax filing status. If it happened 5 years ago, it'll have no bearing, right? As long as it's past 5 years, if it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 20 years ago, doesn't matter. What does matter is in that this last 2 years, if that happened, then we need to know exactly when that happened. We'll ask the student for documentation, and then we'll have to prorate the income for that student, right? So there was a divorce, especially, we can prorate that income to reflect the change in marital status, but it's only by the date that they prove. So if they can't prove it until yesterday, we're going to prorate so much. But if we can prove it for a year before, then we're able to remove more income from the application. So the time just allows us to know if we need to prorate income or if we don't need the parent's income at all. Okay. Hopefully answer your question, Diana. Okay, excellent. So that's again here really important to get the right filing type, right? So married filing jointly, the name and the social security number or tax identification number. That's what we send to tax and finance. If those things are messed up, whether it's the wrong marital file status, the wrong status, single head of household, whether it's the wrong name, uh, or SSN, if those are messed up, we're not going to be able to find them. They'll have to call us. We can change it on our end, and then hopefully find them through IVP later on. But IVP is a big ticket. I do recognize IVP is a big ticket, and that's a lot of what we see as well. Now, this one is when now we ask for the New York State taxable income, right, which is on line 37. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I do see parents like, oh no, I put like literally, I handle social media DMs. They're like, hey, I put the wrong one in. I put the wrong amount in. What do I do? It's okay, right? Whatever a parent puts here, they could put $10. They could put $100,000. As long as they don't put something that's over the limit, right? They put something that's like $145,000. It'll actually won't run through IVP. If they put something under the limit, then once IVP has run, it's going to change whatever that amount is automatically, right? So if they put in $50,000, it should have been 5,000. It's okay. When IVP runs, it'll adjust the income and it'll replace whatever they put in there automatically. Now, if the student's parents are disabled, they should put the disability date and whether they're permanently or totally disabled. For these students, if their parents are disabled, we will be able to remove any income that parent has. If they have social security disability, we can take that income right off the TAP application and it will not count towards their TAP application income. All right, we just need documentation for that. So from here, we transition back to the student side. Right, we've done all the parent side. We're now back to the student side. The student will also have to enter in their income information. Now, you may have students that make some money, right? I listen, this Fortnite stuff, this Roblox. I got a 10-year-old, and he loves watching YouTube while these kids playing Fortnite. They make a lot of money doing that, all right? So you might have kids now that are making good money doing gaming and businesses and entrepreneurship and stuff like that. If they don't have income though, I have seen a lot of cases where they put their parents' income again, right? Which ends up putting them over the limit, and then they have to come back and work with us to remove that income. So have them avoid double reporting. If it's not their income, they should leave it on the parent section and not bring it to their section as well. They'll also need to enter that information on filing status, social security number, and any taxable income they have if they did file. If they didn't file and they didn't receive income, they'll have to self-report just like their parents did. Same thing. If they didn't file, we have to, as I just talked about. Now we're kind of on the tail end. We're on the bottom end of this. We're like in the home stretch when it comes to other family members in college. So we will send out a report to say, hey, if your other family members in college, let us know. There's a slight boost. There's a slight boost in the aid they get if there's other family members attending college. So they can say yes, and then we'll run them to the clearinghouse. And then if we can't find them there, we'll ask for additional information on the other family member in college to keep that boost. Right around November, if we can't find them, we send a letter out to all the families saying, hey, we can't find your person. Have them restate their social security number and sign this document. If we can't find them, we'll ask them again to send some transcripts so we can verify that. And then we'll either keep their award boost or we'll remove it. All right. And then the last thing is e-sign or paper sign. So they have to sign, the parents have to sign the application if the student is dependent to process it. So if a student is missing this application, missing this parent signature page, they'll have a submitted application, but it will not go anywhere until we get verification that we have consent to look at their income information. All right, so they can e-sign or paper sign. If they hit e-sign, they'll be pushed here. They can put in their driver's license information, date of birth, and e-sign it for the student. Now, we have seen that whether it's server issues or the way that parents sometimes apply for these IDs, it may not require a social security number. If that's the case, or a TIN number, TIN, if that's the case, it may be another reason why this doesn't match, right? There's no TIN reported or SSN reported on the DMV server. There's nothing to connect it to. In any case, if they can't get it through, just do a paper one, right? One thing I've noticed in drop-in events and different things is sibling in college do count for the TAP application, even if they're in college somewhere else. It's just, are they in college? I want to see something about the parent though. To my knowledge, this includes spouses, parents, or siblings in the same household. Okay, anybody in the same household in college can be reported there. Kate, good question. Answer that live. There's a couple more questions I'll get to in a minute. All right. Paper sign. One thing I've noticed in virtual drop-in events that we've had here in the past and completion events, you may see it, is everybody is doing these applications and doing stuff, even in the call center where we have these calls on their phone or on their iPad, right? So they're on the phone, we're on the phone with somebody, they're like, oh, I need help with this. And they're like, hold on, look at my phone. And although phones are great, I love phones, I love technology. When it comes to this stuff, this is sometimes students lose that paper signature page. They didn't really lose it, but they've downloaded it on their phone or on their iPad and then can't find that file later on, right? So once students click that paper on that paper signature page on that signature area, it grays out. It no longer populates and it has that paper signed here. So if that happens to a student, they can still finish the application and submit it. But what will happen is in about a week or two, they're going to get an email saying, hey, you didn't sign the application, or your parents didn't sign, come back in. And when they go back in, they can go to the account summary page and there'll be a little link there to a new paper signature page that they can fill out. All right. So I see that a lot too. And hopefully if they do it on a computer, it's easier for them to save that PDF and know where it is as opposed to on their phone or on the iPad. Kate, the family members do not have to be receiving TAP to be part of that. They just have to be found in an ISA or a FAFSA somewhere. All right, and this is the review screen. So you can see right now, one thing they can't change is their birthday. But as of right now, they can modify anything. After IVP has gone through, they cannot change their independence information or their income information. Right. So they can call the call center or they can make an appointment with the call center, and this call center will be able to work with them to make some of those changes on their behalf. Last thing they should do is sign it. That's another thing I see too, is that we'll go into corrections in a little bit. Congratulations. When students are doing corrections, a lot of times they make the corrections or they fill out that questionnaire or they fill out the paper signature page, but then when they finish it, they just X out the account summary. They have to still go down and sign and submit after each change for it to actually be submitted to us. All right, so that's something that we missed too. All right, so I'm going to pause there for any questions that I may have missed or that you guys have real quick. Jesse after said, can I use ID to be created now? Yep, ID can be created right now. You can create ID at any point in time. The parent does not need an ID, right? So the parent does all the information on the same application as the student. They don't need it's not like FAFSA where they need contributor ID. Not the case. It's all in the same application. The student can put their parents' information in. The parent just have to sign it, right? But they can get a user ID at any point in time. Is it true that TAP amount received increases per year, or is it consistent? The TAP amount coincides with the tuition amount at SUNY and CUNY, right? So there is some gap between that, but that is the case, right? The max TAP I think was 5,665 or 55 last year. I haven't heard about an increase yet, but as the budget allows, that will increase. Let's see. Mary Brooke, I think you had a question, but I'm not sure. I don't see it. Yeah, I'm gonna stop sharing for a second, get my screen back up. Here, hold on 1 second, man. You can unmute yourself, Mary Brooke, if you need to.
Sorry, I hit the enter button too soon.
Oh, that's
Can
fine.
you talk a little bit more, Jeffrey, about what documentation a student who has reported on the FAFSA that they have dependent children, but the children are too young and weren't on the tax return from 2 years ago? What do they need to document to prove that?
Okay. So much like the taxes too, so say this is for 26, 27. So say a child is born in August of 2026, that child would not count for that TAP year. Just to be clear, right? So if the child is born of the year, right? So it has child to be born by December 31st of this year, 2025, to count towards TAP 26, 27. Now, in the event that child is born, they fill the application today, child is born in 2 weeks. In that case, they could provide a birth certificate or anything to show that the child is dependent on them, right? So some parents show like a record from the school saying that this is the parent on file. So a birth certificate, anything like that to show that they're dependent on that parent would work. Okay. Great question. There is a list. If there's not on the list, I'll get it up there. We have a list of all the documentation that you can enter for anything, right? So any kind of documentation you want to enter for that, here's the prescribed list. I think that's still in formatting, but that should be out in the next 2 weeks or so. That will cover adding a dependent, income verification, dependency status, things like that. Be out. Let's see what else am I missing here. So you had, so Byron, to get some more information on this. So you say you've had instances where students get the congratulations page when they click TAP. Does that mean like they've already applied for TAP? Okay. So if they already have an application on file, they won't be able to apply again. So this is something that we've seen. You guys mentioned the scholarship only application. Now, to be honest with you, I have no idea how that's happening. No clue. But I've seen it a lot, right? Where students are like, I got denied for scholarship only application, but why? somehow the student ends up filling out the short application as opposed to the entire application. If a student has that issue, they can go back and hit apply for TAP and then apply again. And what will happen is in that first screen, they'll say you have a scholarship only application. Do you want to turn that into a TAP application? The student can click yes to that, and they'll bring in the information from that short app, and they'll have to enter in the rest of the information that's missing, like parent information and things like that, and they'll continue the process from there. So if the student has a scholarship denial or a scholarship only application, they can just apply again or for the first time and complete the full application and submit it. Right. That's an easier fix than calling the call center, return to a TAP application, but then they'll simply go back in and enter information that was missing originally from the short application. Does that kind of help out that question, Byron? I know I saw your hand
All
up a
right.
second ago.
Sorry, Jeffrey. Hi.
How you doing?
Good. Thank you. And thank you for answering the question. Yeah, it kind of helps because I did have that situation as well. But we've had a lot of cases where we give them the link to do the TAP application, the TAP on the web, the direct link, and it does say that they've already completed. It gives them the congratulations page. But we'll look up that same student on HESC web. There's no TAP application. So we have no like workaround for them to apply.
So if that happens, want to make sure that their FAFSA is also saying that they have a New York State, that their legal residence is New York State, because I've seen that too. As to say I've applied and I can't see them, right? I can't see them on my side, and then I go to the ICER and it says a different state. If there's other situations, Byron, feel free to like shoot me an email, and I'll see if there's a different, just so I'm aware of like what the fix might be, because I don't always see what you guys might see in the wild.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks so much.
No problem. Paige had a couple here. So, Paige, great question. If the student is provisionally independent on the FAFSA and it's indicated that they cannot contact their parents, how would I would advise them to proceed with a TAP? So, Paige, they should still fill out the TAP application. And then in this section of special circumstances, there's 4 questions, right? Totally permanently disabled. Are you receiving public assistance? The last question is the involuntary dissolution of family question, which is essentially that same question on FAFSA. So they'll select yes to that question, and then that will forego the parent information. So we'll have to enter any parent information, and they'll be provisionally independent on our side as well. Those students, I'll get more into this during the special circumstances training, will need to give us some kind of documentation, a notarized letter from somebody, just stating what the situation is, and not in amazing detail, but enough to let us know why that parent no longer has the rights to that student or never had rights to that student, right? So they can still proceed without having to wait for FAFSA to go through. Tina Marie, great question. Income verification process. IVP means income verification process. The FAFSA does it automatically, right, through the IRS tax retrieval. We do ours afterwards. They put in the application, and then in batches, we send it to the Department of Tax and Finance to make sure the income they put on the application is the same as what they are actually reporting to New York State. There was a question here like, well, why do we even have them put in the income information? That just gives them an estimated award. So once they fill in the application, that gives them an estimated award right away until IVP clears, and they'll have another award once it's cleared. They'll either go up or down or stay the same based on what they put in. Let's see some more questions coming in here. IVP not done yet. 22. Give me a hold on that, Kate. I'll put that towards the end there, Kate. Oh, I didn't know how to do that. On the IVP issue, I'll come back to that one. What else is there? Yes. So, Allison, great question. TAP only looks at New York State income and net taxable income. Excelsior looks at the federal AGI, right? So it is because it's a federal BAP program. That's why we look at AGI there. So students can be denied Excelsior because AGI is usually a little bit higher, but still receive TAP, right? So they get for TAP they get 100. They're at 120,000, but then their AGI is 126, right? That will put them over the edge. So great question. So if a student is in IVP status and they're trying to figure out why the income information isn't going through yet, the best way is to talk to the call center. They can look at your income verification process and see exactly what's missing, whether it's a name mismatch, whether it's an SSN mismatch, whether it's missing information. They can tell you exactly what's going on with your account and why it's missing. And if maybe Department of Tax and Finance did not find anything on file, things like that. So if you do that, if you do have a student that's talking to the call center, make sure they have that 24 or whatever the appropriate tax return year in their hand, so that when the call center asks them those questions, they have the correct information from that tax return, because that's the key. It's not what it currently is, it's whatever's on file for that tax return, because that's what we're sending tax and finance to find that parent tax return. Okay. All right. So a couple things. We talk about student corrections. They can make corrections on some things right here. They go to student account sign in, and then this pops up where they can update their college application. So update their college code, enter a student ID number. They can also review their award or submit information on the upload documentation feature, or update their contact information. So it's really important. I talked about the forms, right? If they're missing parent information, if they need a parent signature page or residency questionnaire. Once they go into this TAP programs, hit details, they'll hit review or edit your TAP application. Any forms that they're missing or that was sent to them will be right here. So this might be a residency questionnaire. This might be, oh, my bad. Thank you for letting me know, Diana. I appreciate it. Right. Sorry about that. So I'll go back one. So this is where they sign in. They can update their college code, things like that. Here, when they sign in, if they hit details and then hit review or update your TAP information, this brings out that summary. On top of that summary is going to be any forms they're missing. If it's a residency questionnaire, if they got that thing, or if it's a parent missing SSN, if it's a parent signature page, all those will be here. They can click that link and it'll populate whatever document they're missing. Okay, so this is the first place they should look for any documentation they need. They can also call the call center, but they're gonna direct them here as well, because this gives them paper copy of what they need. Whenever they're submitting documentation, I know if you've been around for a while, there was that email that was live. Students will not get replies from emails. So they'll not get replies from TAP processing email. They won't get replies from any emails. The replies come from the call center, and documentation should be sent through the uploads. There's also these instructions on those papers. So the parent signature page also has this information on how to upload it. They should just make sure they select the right file format. So for some of you gurus out there that may know file formats on phones, if you ever upload a picture from your iPhone, it actually comes up as an HEIC file. If you notice on the acceptable file formats here, HEIC is not one of those acceptable file formats. So please make sure that the students are uploading either from a computer or they're checking that file format before they upload from their iPhone, because it'll still show here, but we won't get it. So it's still showing their upload history, but then we still won't receive it because it's in the wrong file format. And students can look at what documents they've uploaded in that upload history within the last 90 days. If they like to change their name, right, or if they like to change their college name, they simply have to hit update college information. And then what that'll do is they have to enter their login, and then this will pop up. So instead of having to go through the entire application all over again, they can simply go here and then update their college code information, update their student ID for each term that they need, and then hit update college information, and it will go through. All right. So as of right now, these are the best ways to make those changes. I also have a document that I created on the FAFSA Ready training page. If this is your first year being aware of FAFSA Ready, It is a 5-module training platform where you guys can kind of go through however you want, right? This is on demand. So I do these live trainings, but these recordings will be up on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days, where you can send them to colleagues or get refreshers on your own. Or if you miss one and want to get that later on, you're more than welcome to come and view it on YouTube on the FAFSA Ready training page. So that's available for you guys 24/7, even if I'm not, to do that. I also have this resource here on common errors and how to fix them. So we looked at some of the errors that we saw happening, and then we create this document on what students can do, maybe why that's happening, and then how to fix those errors on their own, or if they have to actually call the call center or make an appointment with the call center to correct those issues. Because as of right now, the call center is by appointment only. So they have to go to the website, hit get help, schedule a call, and then they can pick a time slot on the available date. Like I said, the last I checked, the next available date was like October 22nd or 23rd. We are way far out right now. But we're working on one bolstering our call center. And there's some other things in the works right now that I won't say what they are, but you will be excited when it happens. All right. So you'll be very excited, and your students will be very excited when that happens. We're working on some things right now to help with that appointment process. Okay. But FAFSA Ready, once again, this is our last training for today. We have one tomorrow, a FAFSA Completion Initiative. If you signed up for that one, please be aware that that is specifically more for counselor support. All right. So FAFSA Completion Initiative doesn't give colleges any more information that they already had. This is more for high schools and maybe community organizations that are helping students understand where they are in the FAFSA-TAP process. As of right now, the call center is that quicker support. So there's no other email that we're giving out for that reason. They have to get an appointment with the call center in order to get the help they need in that way. Right. As far as student lookups and stuff like that, we're not doing the emails at this point in time. There is, so students should be using the upload feature, right? If they can email, they should be able to upload via the website. If they can really email, this just a simple upload. They just click the button and they're able to upload that information there. Because even if it's file type issues, right, we don't get that HEIC file I mentioned that doesn't go through uploads. It also doesn't go through our emails. So if a student were to email me an HEIC file from their iPhone or iPad, I also would not be able to open it. So that's why uploads are the best way to keep everything in the same spot. All right. So I guess I'll open up to any more questions you guys have. I'm gonna let the mics, so the mics are loose. Raise your hand if you want to, but the mics are open. I'm gonna see if there's any other questions in the Q&A panel that I missed or didn't hit. So Allison, there's a question that you asked about why are schools not able to see specific reasons for IVP? There are, because usually there are probable reasons, a few reasons, most of which can be fixed pretty easily here. But I'm actually going to work on something I'm actually working on something with GNS to kind of help explain that a little bit more and give you more information about how to see what the issue may be on IVP. So that is in the works, Allison. All right. Oh, Dream Act. All right, Cindy, great question on the Dream Act. So, that is strictly through the New York State apply at ISTS email. So that does not come through our doors. That goes strictly through ISTS. So NYS Dream at apply.sts.com. So if you want to send me a private chat about what documentation was being sent and what the issue was, I'm gonna be able to direct you on how to best resolve that or who can help with that. All right. So send me that in a private chat, please. Tina Marie, I think you asked a question earlier. I don't know if I answered it about students that are going from they're dependent from independent. If they're going from dependent to independent, right, they'll still need their parents' information until they make sure that they get that documentation in. Once the documentation comes in, they won't need it, or vice versa. They'll need to enter parent information through our HESC call center. But if IVP hasn't run, right? But I did. All right, good. What's the best way to see? Yeah, so Allison, there is no best way to see whether students apply through TAP or Dream Act. That's on purpose, right? So we try to delineate in too many ways who is applying through what method. Okay. And you're right. I mean, even I can't see Allison until it's approved. That one. Right. No, I totally get it. I totally get it. You have to work with the student to see what they're doing, though, because once again, even I don't have. I can guess once I talk to the student. That's how I figure out if they're Dream Act student or a FAFSA-TAP student. So that's through conversation. All right. Let's see what else is there. Did that. If you have any other questions, please feel free. I'm just trying to make sure I didn't miss anybody in the Q&A panel. All right, I'm out of the Q&A panel. Once again, please feel free. There's a lot of resources on the Fast for the Training page. We actually have other trainings coming up on an alternate pathway. So if you have students that may be a part of that population, that'll be a great training. The new All Path is a great tool, and there's some nuances there that you should be aware of, and I'll cover that in the training. Also, please feel free to. There will be a check. I didn't check the survey last class. So in the last class, I sent you a survey. Fill that out. This class, once you leave the meeting, there will be a quick survey that populates. It takes you about 2.5 minutes to go through, maybe 2 minutes to go through. Give me any feedback to make sure we're hitting the mark, and that we're giving you the information that you need. So if you feel free, as I mentioned earlier, I took that feedback. I moved my face off of the presentation so you guys can see all the words. And we'll continue to make this better for you guys and give you the information that you guys need. All right. If there are not any other questions, thank you for joining, and I'll see you in the next training, y'all.